Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Command Core studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, I'm going to be taking you through some incredibly budget commanders that are absolutely incredible and can absolutely dominate the table, no matter the budget. First up, we've got Shirom, the Hegemon. Every single time I see that name, I think of Digimon. Anyone else? No? Okay. 5/5, legendary artifact creature, Sphinx, for 6 mana in Esper. Flying, enters the battlefield. You may return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, this is a commander that is literally just 29 cents. It's been reprinted enough times, essentially, that it, well, doesn't, carry that high price tag of some other commanders that might be, well, a combo commander like this one, but one that might be a bit more expensive. And also the cards that combo with it are incredibly budget friendly as well. And there are so many of them. So yeah, this commander, when built in that way, can be incredibly effective, super fast, and super budget friendly. I mean, basically, if you don't know how the combo works, check out commanderspellbook.com, a fantastic website. Type in Shirom the Hegemon, don't think about Digimon, and then also you will find, well, cards like Clone. Clone is a very simple card, and there are so many different iterations of this card. It's a 0/0 shapeshifter that costs 4 mana in blue. Enters the battlefield, choose a creature in play. If you do, it becomes a copy of that creature. So the combo is very simple, very straightforward. Basically, you have Shirom in play, you play Clone, and all of a sudden you say, okay, Clone becomes a copy of Shirom. The legend rule applies, Shirom sacrifices. With that trigger on the stack, though, from the Clone having Shirom's trigger, that ETB, you can then target Shirom with that trigger, just because of, I don't know, rules lawyer things out there where, the way and things that happen with the stack and that kind of stuff. Like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, legendary rule applies. Basically what happens is, again, Shirom says, oh, okay, cool, I'm coming back into play now. And then it dies again because legend rule. So yeah, state beta effects, I think it's the words. Anyways, basically that keeps happening with the ETB and Shirom's own ETB targeting itself to bring it back because it is an artifact, obviously, so keep bringing itself back again and again and again. So essentially the combo is infinite LTBs, infinite ETBs, and there are plenty of ways to win from there, like Sage's Road Denizen. If I just want to bring up like a very inexpensive version of this combo, essentially, 0.02. Yeah, 2 cents for this card. A 2/3 Vulcan Wizard for 3 mana in blue. Another blue creature in his battlefield under control. Target player mills 2. So yeah, just being able to have this plus your little clone, and again, any clone will do. Literally any clone, essentially. Okay, most clones. There's certain clones I'm sure that don't work, but still, the vast majority of clones do work with this. All of a sudden, you're like, okay, I mill on my opponents and I win. Or, any kind of like a Blood Artist type effect as well. There's plenty of ways to combo off with this, but again, Shirom the Hegemon is one that, again, is so budget friendly. Just 29 cents itself. It can work with an absurd amount of different combos, and the vast majority of those combos are incredibly budget friendly. There's so many easy ways to win with this one. A very, very powerful, very, very budget commander that can absolutely dominate the table. Moving on, Elsha of the Infinite. Yeah, this one is one that doesn't get a lot of attention, but my goodness, does it pack a punch. A 3/3 Jin Monk for 5 mana in Jeskai Prowess. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast non-creature spells to the top of your library. Cast a spell this way, you may cast the Zod Flash. This commander is a really weird combination of like Future Sight meets Vedalken Orrery meets, basically that. Future Sight meets Vedalken Orrery in a way. Again, being able to play off the top of your library makes your library basically a second hand for you. Now, limited to 1 card at a time off the top, but here's the thing. If you play that card, you get access to another one. You play that card, you get access to another one. Or if we've got some ways to manipulate the top of our library, we can get rid of dead cards. On top of that, being able to do this at like flash speed is pretty crazy. Again, Vedalken Orrery basically mixed with Future Sight. And sure, the prowess is quite nice as well and can be game ending. And there's some combos that you can do this too, where you're like, oh, okay, cool. I cast something an infinite amount of times. My infinite, power with my prowess. Okay, rules are out there, not infinite, but a trillion, sure. And then I win the game from there. Codex Shredder. Yeah, this is a very simple card, though. Not talking about combos with this one right now, but a very simple card like this can be so beneficial for you. An artifact for a single mana. Tap, target player mills 1. You can also pay 5 to tap and sacrifice to bring something back from your graveyard, which is nice. But essentially, just play this with Elsha, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't like that card that's on top of my library. Again, maybe it's a land. You don't need a land right now. Okay, I mill it just by tapping this. Oh, okay, cool. A non-creature spell on top of my library. Now I get access to that. It's kind of like a way to, again, like basically not draw a card, but again, select the top of your deck to get rid of those dead cards and to get to the cards that, yeah, kind of just add to your hand. So it can make this plus, other cards that can manipulate the top of your library very beneficial for you for this commander. Also, this is a commander that can work incredibly well with artifacts. And when it comes to commanders that work well with artifacts, cards like Foundry Inspector, of course, can be great. A 3/2 construct for 3 mana. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So this commander that, again, gives you access to the top of your library and lets you play at flash speed. If you're reducing the cost of artifacts, all of a sudden, on an opponent's turn, just whenever you're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I flash this in, whatever. Oh, okay, cool, I manipulate the top of my library, get rid of dead cards. I cast this spell, then I cast that spell, then I cast that spell, because you get a bunch of free spells off the top of your library with all that cost reduction. Yeah, you can do some really crazy things with this one. A lot of value to be had. Again, a combination of basically Future Sight plus Vidalcan Ori, which is a very, very powerful thing for the right build. Next up, also incredibly budget-friendly and works really well with a lot of budget-friendly cards. 24 cents, we got Kaikar, Winds, Fury, a 3/3 Bird Wizard for 4 mana, and Jeskai. Flying, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 white sphere creature token with flying, sacrifice a spirit, add red. So again, being a commander that just mentions, again, non-creature spell in general, that gives you a wide swath of cards to actually pick from, to work with, and do a lot of crazy things with. And literally, this commander could just be worded, hey, like, all of a sudden, you cast a non-creature spell, you have Ritual. You basically Ritual 1. You're getting an extra mana for free. But you can take this in a lot of different directions, obviously. You can keep those spirits around. You can just make this massive flying army that is evasive. And, of course, there's ways to make them even more massive. I won't spoil that yet because there's another commander I want to talk about a little bit that kind of works in that strategy. But more so, again, this is like, okay, you get a free mana back, or you can just, like, bank a mana for every single non-creature spell you cast. So kind of in that vein, like, you just cast, like, say, an Opt, and congratulations, you just basically cast it for free. I mean, you converted, like, your red mana into a, or blue mana into a red mana, but still, like, you basically get that mana back, essentially, if you want that mana back. Opt, just very simple, very effective. Instant scry 1, draw a card. There's a lot of great cantrips that you can utilize with this commander, and they're very effective because it's just, oh, okay, cool. I play this 1 mana spell, I draw a card, great, I get some card advantage. And also on top of that, or card selection and card advantage. And then also on top of that, sure, I make a 1/1 spirit that I can either use that mana right away or bank it. So you can just change spell to spell to spell to spell, do some very crazy things with that. Or yeah, keep those creatures in play and build up your army. But yeah, if you are chaining spell to spell to spell, yeah, things like Gutter Snipe can help you out a lot, which again, very budget friendly. 14 cents, 2/2 Goblin Shaman for 3 mana in red. Whenever you cast in its source spell, 2 damage to each opponent. So again, you can go the route of, all right, I build up my army, I swing at you, I build up my army more, I swing at you some more, those kinds of ways to go about it. Or you can be like, oh yeah, I just go Spell Slinger, essentially, cast a ton of spells. Again, basically utilizing ritual effects, essentially, for all of your spells. And all of a sudden be like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I'm dealing 2 damage for each one of these I'm casting, and it's very easy for me to cast them because I keep chaining from spell to spell to spell to spell to spell. Yeah, Karwin's Fury can be built in a lot of different ways again, because again, it is so wide, it is so... Again, a swath of cards can work well with it, it being non-creature spells in general, but also it is, hey, you know what, I give you the avenue for either mana if you want that, or I also give you the avenue of just massive army, whatever you want with this one. Okay, and in a somewhat similar way, we've got Aela, Artful Provocateur. Just 42 cents for this version of Aela. And yes, for this episode, I was like, okay, commanders and cards that are 50 cents or less. And I'm like, do I count cards, that are commanders, that only one version of the card is? Like, this kind of, whatever they call this, like the retro frame version. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to count that. So yeah, if they do have, a different art version, and it's within my 50 cents, I'm counting it. There we go. A 2/3 Fairy Warlock for 4 mana in Esper, flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. Other creature control with flying, get +1/+0. Whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, make a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. Again, very, very similar to Kaikar. But this one, again, already gives you basically creatures that are pumped slightly. Again, it gives you those flyers, which again, you're making flyers when you cast those artifacts or enchantments, into 2/1s essentially instead of just 1/1s. Now, unlike Kaikar, you can't utilize them for mana, and also you are a bit more specific on what kinds of cards are going to be triggering this. Again, artifacts or enchantments, those can technically be, artifact creature or enchantment creature, sure, so that's different than Kaikar, but again, it's a more specific type of card. That being said, a strategy that works well with Kaikar can also work incredibly well with this one, and it's incredibly budget-friendly and incredibly effective. And that's just literally take a bunch of anthems and chuck them in the deck. Intangible Virtue, a great card, enchantment for 2 mana in white. Creature tokens you control get ++1 and have vigilance. So literally just by playing this, you're like, okay, I play this. Oh, my commander triggers because this is enchantment. Awesome. I made a 2/1 fairy, or a 1/1 technically, that gets +1/+0 for my commander. Also a +1 from this and vigilance. So now all of a sudden, I am churning out 3/2 vigilant fairies every single time I play an artifact or enchantment. And again, you can go like a combination of both if you want in the deck. You could go like one or the other. However you want to go about it, essentially. But yeah, you can build some really disgusting, really effective decks with this commander. And of course, again, if you're just going all anthems, you're like, oh, okay, also Dictative Heliod. Sure, I'll flash this in for 5 mana. My creatures get +2/+2. All of a sudden, again, all of my little fairies that I'm making now are, again, well, 4/2s, or 4/3s, I should say. But also, if you have Intangible Virtue, other ones too, you can just make, again, like every single time you cast an artifact or enchantment, you are making like a 10/9 fairy or whatever it is, essentially. You are just building up that power throughout the game and making it so difficult for your opponents to actually keep up. Aela, Artful Provocateur, again, can be built in a couple of different ways. Again, that really helps with the budget appeal to it, being able to go artifacts or enchantments or a combination of both. And again, a very, very, very honed strategy, a very, again, budget-friendly strategy with the kinds of cards that you can utilize in it are very effective with it. Again, just utilizing a bunch of anthems can be very effective with this. Next up, now when I was going through these commanders, again, I just typed in a Scryfall, commanders, less than 50 cents essentially, or is commander, USD minus 50 or 150. Basically, I did not expect to see Rowan. I didn't realize Rowan is just 24 cents right now. When this card got spoiled, I was like, wow, okay, that is incredibly powerful, and that is a mythic, and that's going to be expensive. I was wrong. Anyways, regardless, if you are looking for an incredibly powerful budget commander that can absolutely dominate the table in a very budget-friendly way, look no further than Rowan at 24 cents, a 4/2 human wizard with menace for 3 mana and Rakdos. Tap spells you cast this turn that are black and or red cost X less to cast for X is the amount of life you lost this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Here's the thing. This is so easy to use and abuse. Again, you start off at 40 life. Life is a resource. Use it. Again, you can utilize almost all of it with something like Mischievous Poltergeist very easily. A simple 1/1, I think it's a spirit. It says ghost, but I think it's a spirit. For 3 mana in black flying, pay 1 life, regenerate. Now, this is a card that is near and dear to my heart because I love this card back in my Selenia Dark Angel deck. But yeah, I took that deck apart because here's the thing. Don't use like 15 plus board wipes in a deck. Players tend to not like that in general. That being said, this is a card that essentially, again, you can manage your life total down as far as you want. You can literally just keep activating this. It doesn't matter if you're actually utilizing it to regenerate. You're just like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, regenerate again. It's like, no one hit me. Regenerate again. No, I'm fine. No, keep regenerating. So all of a sudden, you just take your life total down from 40 down to, let's say, 10 if you really want to do that. And Rowan's like, oh, awesome. All right, well, you lost 30 life this turn. So all of a sudden, I tap and your spells that are red and or black are going to cost 30 less to cast. And you can do this incredibly quickly. And all of a sudden, again, you're not in certain colors that could really use and abuse this, like, say, white and blue, which are very good on tapping things, actually even green. That being said, there is a certain type of card that probably was never intended to be actually utilized like this, but you definitely can, and it's good for Cranko decks as well. Threaten. Threaten cards are amazing with this commander. A sorcerer, 3 mana in red, untap target creature, gain 12 until end turn, the creature gains haste till end turn. Again, the intent of this card was literally just like, okay, yeah, opponent's got a good creature, you steal it. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's red. But with your commander, you're like, okay, I tap Rowan, my spells cost 30 less to cast, whatever. All right, I cast Threaten for just 1 red mana. And I untap my commander, Rowan. I've gained control of it, and it gets haste till end turn. Cool. Yeah, you're not actually, stealing a creature. You are literally just using this in a tap spell, which is amazing because all of a sudden you're just untapping your commander. You're tapping again. Now all of a sudden your spells cost, again, 60 less to cast than in that example. And of course, if you just cast like one spell, like a cut to ribbons or whatnot, then you just win the game. There's plenty of ways to win the game from there. There's plenty of ways to not draw your entire deck essentially, but there's plenty of ways to just actually say, oh, okay, I cast giant X spell, I burn in it, you all to the ground or whatnot. I win the game because Rowan can very, very easily make all your spells cost basically nothing to put a ton of mana into, X's or just untap effects. It's an absurd commander, again, that really utilizes your life total in a downward fashion, but in the best of ways. It's incredibly budget friendly. And again, all those threat effects, not all of them, but the vast majority are incredibly budget friendly as well. And there's a lot of life loss effects like Mischievous Poltergeist that are also incredibly budget friendly. Yeah, you can do a lot with this one. Moving on, Nethroi, Apex of Death. Yet another budget-friendly commander. This one only 35 cents. That can be a real heavy haymaker. A 5/5 Cat Nightmare Beast with Death Touch and Lifelink for 5 mana, but you'll probably never pay that because you're going to be mutating this for, well, 7 mana in total. And again, mutate means that you essentially put it over under target non-human creature. Again, keep in mind it is non-human, all right? For whatever reason, they made it non-human. They mutate it into the creature plus the top all abilities under it. But the important thing here is basically when this mutates, return any number of target creature cards with total power 10 or less in your graveyard to the battlefield. So essentially, you say, oh, okay, cool. I get to reanimate some things, and sure, that could be like 1 or 2 creatures or whatnot if you're building like big power, but you also can just really take advantage of a bunch of small creatures or even creatures that have no power, and yeah, basically reanimate your entire graveyard, and there's a lot of crazy things you can do this one. There are, of course, a good amount of like mill effects, obviously, in these colors. There's certain entomb effects in these colors that you can go search for a certain thing, get in your graveyard, or ways to just get a ton of things in your graveyard quite quickly. But yeah, even if you're just like, okay, I've got like Satyr Wayfinder and creatures like in the deck that have a very little amount of power. Again, just a 1/1 Satyr for 2 mana, enters the battlefield of the top 4 cards of your library, put a land from one of them in your hand, the rest in your graveyard. Again, milling things in your graveyard is a very good thing. So early on, this can be great to set yourself up. But later on, if you're like, yeah, sure, I'll just get this in play to set myself up again, essentially, from my commander. It only takes up 1 of my power, and I probably can get like 10 plus creatures out in play. You can also take advantage of creatures that actually have a power of 0, like Realm Seekers. Like, this literally doesn't count against your power total at all. It's a 0/0 Elf Scout for 6 mana in green. Enters the X counter's honor X the total number of cards in player's hands. Pay 3 mana total, remove a counter from it. Search life for a land, put in your hand, then shuffle. Essentially, this is a creature that can be absurdly large. Again, like, it costs 6 mana, so sure, like a giant creature for 6 mana. All right, but again, for you, if you've got ways to mill it, ways to discard it, whatever, you're basically getting it out again for free with that commander's ability. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, okay, cool, I put into play. And if you've never played a Realm Seekers, they get huge very quickly again because 4 players, let's say everyone's got 5 or so cards in hand. That's a 20/20. And again, that you're getting into play for free from your commander's effect because it's not taking up any of that power. It's not 20 power. It just depends upon when it enters what it gets. So yeah, there are certain ones like keep in mind, like, the stars or whatever that actually have power, in the graveyard as something else essentially. But yes, when it comes to ones that inherently have 0 power, you're going to take advantage of those. There's also certain combos you can work with this too. I mean, even just getting like Gary in play essentially can win you the game. A bunch of other creatures that have a bunch of black pips essentially. Gary, I think, only has 2 power, but yes, being able to take advantage of low power creatures with this one with like a mill kind of entomb like reanimation strategy, you can do some absolutely crazy and amazing things with this. Next up, Taoa, Benthic Druid, a card that if it wasn't reprinted and was probably printed at the rarity that it maybe should have been when it was first made, maybe, rare at least, but maybe even mythic essentially, it would probably be very expensive, but it is not. It has been reprinted. It's uncommon. It is just 9 cents for this gem of a commander. And yeah, there's an absurd amount of cards that work incredibly well with it, and just the concept in general essentially is just kind of what you already want to do in Commander as it is. A 3/3 Merfolk Druid for 5 mana in Simic. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Now, the gaining life is nice. It pads your life total. There's certain kind of effects you can take advantage of, like gaining life in certain ways. That being said, what really matters is, hey, land, enter, draw a card. Yeah, that's grossly effective because, again, it's already incredibly effective for you in Commander to just ramp, to just get a bunch of lands into play because there's basically no consequence for that. Because typically in social games of Commander that aren't like, the tippy top like CDH games, mass land destruction is a massive no-no, which means that essentially by ramping in this way, by getting a bunch of lands out, your ramp is protected and you have a bunch more resources than your opponents do because you just keep drawing cards, you keep playing lands, you get more lands into play with things like, well, Harrow, which is already a heavily played card in Commander, a very good card in Commander, but of course Taoa turns it into an absurdly good card. Cast a spell, sacrifice a land essentially, go get 2 basics into play, untapped, and then shuffle. Yeah, 3 mana, ramp by 1 technically, but you lose out on 1, you're getting 2 into play. And so essentially you're being able to, fix your mana potentially better, getting different lands into play. That being said, again, with Taoa, oh, okay, cool. I only ramped 1, but I got 2 lands in play, and all of a sudden I get to draw 2 cards. Evolving Wilds, lands like that, like little fetch lands essentially. Also ways to essentially get like, oh, okay, cool. 2 triggers off of that. Draw 2 more cards thanks to my commander. Of course, there are also combos that you can work with as well. Retreat to Helm was recently reprinted. 26 cents just for this one. This works with like bounce lands plus like any of those creatures that can like tap, put a land from your hand into play. Yeah, there's quite a few of those as well, and usually they're pretty budget friendly. So this one's like, hey, land enters battlefield to control, untap something. Oh, okay, cool. Keep untapping that creature again and again and again. Infinite landfall triggers. I mean, not infinite, because again, Taoa will have you kind of lose the game because, again, drawing your entire deck. That being said, yeah, there are combos that work with it. There are ways to win with that, but just even if you literally just, okay, I've got Taoa, chuck in a ton of ways to just ramp with lands, chuck in a lot of, you know, budget-friendly fetch lands like Evolving Wilds, etc., and you probably have a pretty good build already. I mean, obviously you need some like win conditions in there too, but there's plenty of good ones to utilize. But yeah, Taoa is a mainstay for a reason when it comes to landfall strategies, and it's incredibly budget friendly. And again, because of all the ways that you can ramp in Commander and all the ways that you can work well with ramping, there's a lot of budget friendly cards to utilize with it. Next up, Tesa Karlov. Again, yet another one of the alternative arts that I'm technically counting, because again, this one is 45 cents for this art for some reason. Regardless, a 2/4 Human Advisor for 4 mana. In Orzhov, a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent control to trigger. That ability triggers additional time. Creature tokens you control have vigilance and lifelink. Remember back in the day when it was like this in Yarok that were like, hey, doubling up things. Cool, yeah, it's a very unique effect that we don't have commanders that do, essentially, except for these very few ones. And now these days it's like, yeah, sure, I guess, Felix 5 boots. Sure, yeah, you're a thing. Yeah, combat damage triggers. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, it seems like every year now we're getting like too many of them, but back in the day, used to be kind of unique. That being said, Tesa Karlov, while not being unique necessarily anymore when it comes to like, okay, double something up effect, it's still unique in that it doubles up death triggers, and that is incredibly impactful. I mean, aristocrat-style strategies are very powerful commander for a reason. They have a lot of staying power. It can be really tough to deal with them once they get their engine going, essentially, and Tesa Karlov is something that just hypercharges your engine in aristocrat-style build. Typically, in aristocrat-style decks, what you want are basically like 3 things. You want creature fodder, which is things to sacrifice. You want a free sacrifice outlet, which you have plenty of those and access to these colors, and plenty of budget-friendly ones as well. And then also you want a payoff. And essentially, Tesa Karlov says, let's double up that payoff. Now, there are certain creatures themselves that have a payoff on them, like Infestation Sage. This one, a brand new card that is just 5 cents, is a 1/1 elf warlock for a single black mana. When it dies, you make a 1/1 insect. So already this is a good value card. Again, it's 1 mana, you get 2 creatures. That's great for aristocrat style strategy where you spawn creature fodder. That being said, Tesa says, you know what? Let's make that even better, okay? 1 mana equals 3 creatures now, because when this dies, you're getting 2 insects. And on top of that, again, when those creatures die, you're getting their death triggers as well, you know, from other things like, say, I don't know, like Blood Artists, those kinds of things. That being said, like, Midnight Reaper specifically for non-token creatures, yeah, just a 27-cent card, then give you an absurd amount of value. A 3/2 Zombie Knight for 3 mana. Non-token creature control dies, deals 1 damage to you, draw a card. Life is a resource. That damage is fine. 1 life for 1 card is absolutely worth it, basically any day of the week. That being said, again, when any of your non-token creatures dies, Taste is like, you know what, make that 2 cards instead. And of course, you're probably gonna have ways to like reanimate those creatures, get them back or whatever, just get even more creature fodder into play. Tesa Karlov is a mainstay for a reason. It is a very, very powerful commander, one of the most popular aristocrat style commanders of all time. And yeah, again, I didn't even mention like, okay, that like it also says creature tokens you control vigilance and lifelink, because like that's just something else again. So like any of those little tokens that you're making, including those insects with flying, also have vigilance and lifelink for whatever reason. So that was just kind of stapled on the card. It didn't need that, but yeah, you could go heavy into that too if you really wanted to as well. But overall, a commander that just gives you so much value, works so well with so many things. Again, there's a lot of budget friendly in these colors. You know, ways to make a lot of creature fodder. There's a lot of budget-friendly payoffs for sacrificing creatures, and there's a lot of budget-friendly ways to, well, get a lot of different value out of those creatures as well, and a lot of sacrifice outlets too. So yeah, Tesa Karlov, budget-friendly in the best ways. Moving on, Hamza, Guardian of Arashin. Again, when it comes to commanders that kind of get underrated sometimes, if they're uncommon, I mean, outside of like Taoa, which like everyone knows, it's like, oh my gosh, why is that uncommon? Hamza is a very effective commander and can definitely dominate a table, especially players that might not know just how powerful this can be. A 5/5 Elephant Warrior for 6 mana, but you're never going to pay that. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature control they counter on it. You'll probably just pay 2 mana in total, essentially, to get this in play. On top of that, it basically gives this to everyone else too. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less cast for each creature control they counter on it. So basically, go a little wide, get some creatures in play that have counters on them, and all of a sudden pay nearly nothing for your creatures. Of course, there's plenty of really effective ways and really budget-friendly ways. Again, this commander itself was 9 cents, but like Good Fortune Unicorn, so much more expensive at 10 cents. A 2/2 Unicorn for 3 mana in Selesnya. Whenever creature you control enters, put a counter on it. So it again already meets that requirement. It's like, okay, cool, yeah. All right, creatures come into play. You're meeting the requirement of getting that counter on you, which means that, again, your commander is less expensive, and also all your other creatures are too. And if you really want to go about it in this way, you can. But yeah, there's some combos with it too, like Ancestral Statue, 3/4 Golem for 4 mana. Enters the battlefield, return a non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand, which actually can be Ancestral Statue because it doesn't say like another. So essentially, like, okay, if I have cost reduction of 4 for my creatures, which is so easy to get to with Hamza, because again, you just need 4 creatures with 4 counters on them, or 1 counter each, I should say, 1 counter each of those creatures, all of a sudden this costs 0, and by doing that, you're like, oh, I play it, I bounce it back to my hand, I play it, I bounce it back to my hand. Now, obviously, it doesn't just win you the game, but it's infinite storm count. It's also, of course, infinite ETBs, infinite LTBs, infinite life with like a Soul Sisters kind of thing as well, and plenty of ways to win from there too. And also, if you just use like a bunch of like giant colorless creatures in the deck too, or artifact creatures, just playing those for free can be absurdly effective as well. So again, Hamza Guardian and Ration, again, there's plenty of support for this one. There's plenty of budget-friendly counter builds, plenty of budget-friendly cards out there, and plenty of ways to use and abuse this absurd effect. When it comes to cost reduction, yeah, that is a way to dominate the table, and there's very few commanders out there that really do it better than like a heavily focused Hamza deck when it comes to reducing the cost of your creatures. Now, the final commander I want to bring up, though, is Sten Paranoid Partisan. This is an incredibly heavy-hitting commander that, again, I just mentioned that, cost-reducing commanders can be absurdly powerful. This one is very budget-friendly, and you build in a bunch of different ways, too. 27 cents for this gem, a 2/2 Human Wizard for 2 mana and Azorius, enters the battlefield as a card other than creature or land. So yeah, you're not going to build like a creature deck or a land deck around this, most likely. That being said, spells you cast the chosen type cost 1 to cast. So you can name anything else and you reduce that. Now, there are certain choices you can definitely make if you want. If you want to go like sorceries or instants, go spell slingy. Awesome, very cool. Again, cost reduction can really, really help you out. Can save you a lot of mana throughout the game. Can be very powerful. You could also go enchantments if you really want to go that way. That being said, yeah, artifacts are the most broken thing in Magic, or the most easily broken thing in Magic, I should say. By paying 3 mana, you can also exile and bring it back. So yeah, you can change it if you really want to. If you want to build like a couple of different kinds of strategies with it, you're like, okay, cool, I'll go artifacts, enchantments, whatever. If I want to switch this up, I can. But if you want to build a very focused build around this, you can decimate your table. I mean, Starnheim course already talked about other like artifact reducers like Foundry Inspector essentially, but a 2/2 Pegasus with flying for 3 mana and white. Artifact enchantment spells you cast cost 1 to cast. So sure, this can help with either, but yeah, with artifacts, you're like, okay, cool. This plus my commander, my artifacts cost 2 less. That is absurdly powerful. There are so many great artifacts out there. I mean, just think about even playing like a Mana Rock. You're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. Play my Azorius Signet for free. Play all these things for free. Probably have other triggers that happen whenever I cast an artifact. And of course, you can have ways to maybe even bounce your artifacts back to your hand to replay them for value as well. And actually, bouncing them can be value too with Paradoxical Outcome. Instant for 4 mana in blue. Turn any number of target non-land, non-token permanents you control to others' hands. Draw a card for each card, turn your hand this way. So yeah, Sten can definitely be built in kind of like an artifact storm type build. These are the kind of builds like this in combo you should probably be asking your playgroup ahead of time, essentially, because yeah, you might learn the hard way that some players out there don't like to play against Solitaire, which I learned the hard way when I was playing my Joy deck, where I thought it was very clever. Yeah, I thought it was clever, but Artifact Storm kind of just taking up 20 minutes a turn. Some players don't want to just sit around for that. But yeah, Sten Paranoid Partisan can be an absurdly powerful budget commander that other players might take very seriously because it's not all that popular. And again, it's like, oh, cool, yeah, Sten. You're like, oh, yeah, by the way, all my artifacts are free. I'm playing them again and again and again. And you all lose. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. As always, comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.